Anya and I were a couple in the Appalachian Mandate resistance, soldiers who had fought side by side for years. We lost everything in a brutal ambush. Along with the other survivors, we became prisoners of the occupying force, the Corps. The Corps used our own people as leverage, forcing us to volunteer as gladiators in their blood sport. They made us fight robots. They made us fight gene-spliced monsters. And, in the end, they made us fight each other. Every match was a fight to the death. Our blood and lives served up as primetime entertainment for the masses. Anya and I were both forged into gladiators. After countless life-or-death duels, we clawed our way to the top, becoming superstars of the arena. The season runs in 3-year cycles. Each cycle, a fresh batch of conscripts is thrown into the grinder. By the end, the few who survive are crowned champions. That's when the Real slaughter begins, the Champions Gauntlet. The champions are pitted against each other in a final, bloody tournament. Only 7 will survive to become the legacy fighters for the next season. And now, in the final match of the Gauntlet, I was facing her. I had already made my decision. I would die tonight so that Anya could live to see another season. The stadium, a colossal bowl that could swallow tens of thousands, was packed to the rafters, a roaring sea of humanity. Broadcast drones hovered at every conceivable angle, while a massive Zeppelin floated overhead, providing a god's-eye view for the millions more watching the live stream. A voice, amplified to a deafening boom, echoed through the arena, heralding the first combatant. And now, entering the arena, a warrior whose power can shatter mountains, who wields his axe to carve the very heavens. He is Inferno. The moment the name hit, the stadium was consumed by holographic flames, so real that waves of panic screams erupted from the stands. The fire was an illusion, a projection, but the effect was breathtaking. Illuminated by the flickering light, the eastern gate groaned open. A colossal figure, well over 7 feet tall, emerged from the darkness. His body was encased in heavy alloy armor, his face hidden behind a horned bull mask. The massive, curved horns glinted in the firelight, and thick, coarse dreadlocks spilled from beneath the helmet, giving him a wild, untamed look. Slung over his shoulder was a long-handled battle axe with a brutally wide blade. Holographic flames licked along its edge, the special effect that gave him his name. In combat, the projections would engulf his entire body, turning him into a walking giant of fire. This was me, Inferno. The title was bestowed upon me after I reached the elite ranks. The Corps gave us all stage names and custom effects, anything to make the fights more spectacular, to squeeze every last drop of commercial value from our bodies before they broke. Surrounded by the digital fire, I stomped toward the center of the arena, my heavy tread amplified by the stadium's sound system. Reaching the center, I slammed my foot down. A shockwave of projected flames erupted outwards as the sound system blasted a thunderous boom. The entire arena vibrated, as if my single step carried the weight of a titan. I raised my axe and let out a primal roar, a sound magnified until it shook the very foundations of the building. In response, a ring of jets lining the protective wall of the arena unleashed columns of real fire. A wave of genuine heat washed over the crowd, and their excitement boiled over into a deafening, thunderous ovation. As the cheers died down, the announcer's voice returned. And now, for our second champion. She moves with the grace of a panther, her blades faster than lightning. Before you can blink, she'll be at your throat. She is the beautiful, the deadly. Blade rose. The gate on the opposite side of the arena slid open. The holographic flames dissolved, replaced by a cascade of falling rose petals. A figure emerged, tall, with a fighter's lean curves. She had a striking, determined face, her long hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her body was a study in athletic perfection. Sculpted abs, powerful legs, and flawless, pale skin. She wore a crimson chest plate, pauldrons, bracers, and greaves. Between the pieces of armor, large swaths of skin were exposed, crisscrossed by a series of tactical straps that only accentuated her allure. Blue lights glowed faintly on the armor and at the junction of the straps. This wasn't just for show. It was a discrete force field generator. The field created a non-Newtonian effect, absorbing and deflecting kinetic energy, drastically reducing the impact of any weapon. Strapped to her back were two crescent-shaped blades. Their edges glowed with intense heat, forming a perfect, luminous red circle behind her. This was Anya. My Anya. Blade rose. She didn't walk. She exploded into motion, a blur of flips and acrobatic leaps that carried her across the sand. She finished with a stunning front flip that launched her 10 feet into the air, landing perfectly in the center of the arena. She rose and waved to the adoring crowd. As she did, real rose petals rained down from above, carrying their sweet fragrance throughout the stadium. The crowd went insane. Blade Rose, marry me. Anya, I love you. Rose, Rose, Rose. The chants were deafening. Every gladiator's true identity was a closely guarded secret. Our bodies were altered. Our appearances changed. Most of us never knew who we were fighting. Anya had been changed, too. Already beautiful, they had made her stunning. Her body was taller, sculpted to an impossible ideal. But I knew it was her. I had recognized her from the very first day. After 8 years of fighting and loving, I would know her anywhere. She, however, didn't recognize me. The transformation they'd put me through was too extreme. I'd gone from a lean 5'7" to a 7'3" monster of muscle and bone. My quiet, boyish face was hidden behind that snarling bull helmet. Even if she knew that Inferno was also from the Appalachian Mandate, she would have pictured some other huge soldier from our unit, never the man she loved. Never Leo. After acknowledging the crowd, Anya knelt on one knee, crossed her hands over her chest, and bowed her head toward a single direction. It was an unspoken tradition among the gladiators, a silent salute to the home you were fighting for. Her bow was aimed toward the Appalachian Mandate, our home. I mirrored her gesture, turning to face the same direction and offering a slight bow. I saw her body tense for a fraction of a second. She was surprised. She hadn't known we came from the same place. When the salutes were done, I turned to her. I balled my left fist and pressed it against my heart. With my right hand, I made the distinct motion of pulling the pin on a grenade. It was a signal born from the worst kind of firefight, when you're pinned down, out of options, and the only thing left is the grenade on your belt. It meant you were ready to pull the pin. In the resistance, it had one meaning: I'm finished. In it for me, so they can't take me alive. The Corps loved taking prisoners. Their primary tactic was to deploy swarms of armored, four-legged robotic crabs. They were low to the ground, about the size of a large dog, and incredibly hard to kill. They'd weather our gunfire, get close, and zap us with taser shocks. Corps soldiers would then rush in, inject us with sedatives, and drag us away. To avoid that fate, soldiers who were hit would try to make that final gesture, begging a comrade to put them down. Here, now, in the arena, it meant something else. I'm sacrificing myself. Let me die so you can win. Anya froze when she saw the signal. Her mind raced for a few seconds, and then, a look of profound sorrow in her eyes, she gave a slow, deliberate nod. She understood. Her survival meant more for our people. As one of the few female champions, her fan base was enormous. The Corps would shower the Appalachian Mandate with supplies and rewards just to have her fight again next season. A cannon boomed, signaling the start of the match. We both stepped back, creating a dozen yards of space, and fell into our fighting stances. I let out a roar and charged, axe held high. I closed the distance in less than 2 seconds, bringing the massive weapon down in a devastating overhead chop. The axe left a crescent of fire in its wake. Anya, impossibly fast, sidestepped the blow. As I recovered, I spun, swinging the axe in a horizontal arc aimed at her waist. She leaped, jets on her armor firing for a split second, launching her high over my head. As she sailed over me, her blades flashed. I heard a loud clang, and one of the horns on my helmet was sheared off, spinning through the air before embedding itself in the sand. The crowd roared its approval. I turned to face her as she landed in a crouch. I bellowed in theatrical rage, the eyes of my helmet glowing red, and charged again. This time, she met me head-on, her twin blades raised to block my downward strike. The force of the impact was immense, driving her down into the sand and kicking up a cloud of dust. She held her ground. I shifted my weight, converting the downward force into another wide, sweeping slash. Again, she blocked, but the sheer power of the blow sent her flying. She sailed back 20 feet, tucked into a roll mid-air, and landed on her feet, ready. This was all part of the show. I was ready to die, but we had to give them a performance first. A champion couldn't just go down in a few hits. The punishments for a boring fight wouldn't fall on the dead gladiator, but on the people of their mandate. The Corps would cut their supply lines. People back home would starve. Most of us were from the resistance movements of the various mandates. Our victories and losses were calculated, converted into rations and resources for our homes. To protect our families, we had no choice but to fight. We had no choice but to kill each other. For years ago, I was just another prisoner. They threw us into a holding pen at a processing camp, hundreds of us, without food or water. Our only relief was a chemical shower that sprayed down occasionally, the water laced with a disinfectant that burned our throats. People died every day. Figures in white hazmat suits would come in, drag the bodies out, and leave. After days, or was it weeks, of this, a squad of guards stormed in, herding us out into a large plaza where thousands of other prisoners were already gathered around a raised platform. On the stage stood a Corps officer, a major, flanked by a scantily clad attendant. In her hands, she held a silver tray bearing an ice-cold soda and a plate of hot, steaming cheeseburger sliders. The scent of grilled meat and sugary soda drifted over the crowd of naked, starving prisoners, a form of exquisite torture. We swallowed convulsively, our stomachs clenching with a hunger so profound it bordered on madness. It had been over a week since I'd last eaten. The smell alone was enough to make me want to kill. The major took a long sip of the soda, then picked up a slider and chewed it slowly, savoring every bite. When he was done, he patted the attendant on the rear and sent her away. He turned to us, his eyes sweeping over the crowd with undisguised contempt. "I trust," he began, his voice oozing arrogance, "that after enjoying our hospitality, you've all had time to reflect on your mistakes. We offered you degenerates food, water, a place to live, and you repaid our generosity with bullets." He paused. "So, we were forced to correct you. You brought this on yourselves. But despite your unforgivable crimes, we have decided to offer you a chance to atone." He snapped his fingers. Huge holographic screens flickered to life above him, displaying 5 figures, 3 men and 2 women, all decked out in gladiator gear. One man was a giant in heavy plate, wielding a massive halberd. Another was leaner, armored in scales, with a curved sword and a round shield. The third wore almost no armor at all, just a chest plate, and held a rapier. They were archetypes, representing the different classes of fighter. These are gladiators. I assume you know what that is, so I won't waste my breath explaining. You now have the opportunity to become one of them. Do this, he continued, and you will eat the finest food, sleep in soft beds, and enjoy every service imaginable. He gestured again, and the holograms changed. The new scene showed a lavish, steaming bathhouse. Beautiful women surrounded a handful of muscular men, hand-feeding them delicacies from ornate platters, massaging their bodies, their soft moans audible even over the murmuring crowd. In the center, dancers performed for their pleasure. We were broken, starving, and tormented. Seeing that, some men began to waver. I could hear them whispering, licking their cracked lips. The collective sound grew into an uneasy buzz. A smirk touched the major's lips. "All of this can be yours. But of course, I know some of you have stronger convictions. You aren't swayed by such base pleasures. So, for you, we have a better offer." Another gesture. The screens shifted again. The new image was of a city in one of the mandates. The streets were filthy, lined with ramshackle homes packed together like rotting teeth. In a small, muddy square, a massive crowd of people, old, young, and countless children, was gathered. The camera zoomed in. It was a supply distribution point. Workers were handing out bags of food. "These people," the major said, his voice dropping slightly. "These are your people, are they not? You claim you fight for them. Well, now you can. Become a gladiator, win your matches, and we will reward your home mandate based on your performance. The better you fight, the more they get." The scene on the screen shifted to a close-up of a little girl, her face smudged with dirt, breaking into a radiant smile as she clutched a bag of grain. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated relief. The smile of a child who would finally get to eat a full meal. Then, the Major's face hardened, his tone turning to ice. But if you refuse to cooperate, if you don't perform, then they will be punished for your failures. The hologram changed one last time. It showed a group of people, so starved they were little more than living skeletons. They sat and lay in the dirt, too weak to move, their eyes hollow and vacant. These are the families of those who refuse to cooperate, the Major said with a chilling calm. We were forced to put their districts on a diet, help them lose a little weight. He let out a cold, humorless laugh. So, ladies and gentlemen, what's it going to be? The crowd erupted. Hands shot up everywhere, people pushing and shoving, desperate to be chosen. After seeing those images, I raised my hand, too. A smug smile spread across the Major's face as he saw that nearly every prisoner had volunteered. Excellent. You've made the right choice. Those of us who agreed were led away by armed guards. A dozen or so who refused were left behind. Their faces were grim but resolute. They had made their peace with death. As we were marched away, I saw the Major signal a squad of soldiers in red uniforms. He walked down from the platform, drew his pistol, and headed toward the defiant few. The new recruits were taken to a large bathhouse to be cleaned, then to a mess hall where we were allowed to eat until we were sick. Finally, they assigned us to barracks, a sprawling complex already housing prisoners from other battles. They split us up, mixing prisoners from different mandates. I was put in a 10-man room, assigned a top bunk. The man below me, Marcus, was from the prosperity sector. After a day of rest, we had recovered some of our strength. The guards returned, organized us by room, and marched our 10-man squads to the mess hall for breakfast. After the meal, we were led to a series of enclosed, basketball court-sized arenas. Each arena held 2 squads, 20 men. They gave each of us a cheap machete and a small, round shield. Here, you will fight for the right to become a gladiator, an officer told us from the doorway. There are 20 of you. Only 5 will be chosen. He left, sealing the door behind him, leaving the 20 of us staring at each other. Does he mean we have to kill each other until only 5 are left? Someone whispered. That's what it sounds like. Are we really going to do this? The nervous chatter grew, the atmosphere thick with tension. I could see men shifting their weight, gripping their weapons tighter. They were getting ready to snap. As a veteran of countless battles, my senses screamed. I went on high alert, watching everyone, especially Marcus, the man from the bunk below me. It didn't take long. A man roared and swung his machete at the person next to him. The other man was ready, blocking the strike with his shield. That was the signal. The room exploded into violence. Marcus moved on me instantly, his blade swinging. I was already coiled, ready to react. As he twisted to put power into his swing, I dropped my weight, turned, and caught his machete on my shield. In the same motion, I drove my own blade forward, straight into his gut. He had left himself completely open, his shield arm thrown back for balance. My machete slid into his abdomen, tearing through his intestines and piercing up into his chest cavity. His attack died, his strength vanishing in an instant. Using my forward momentum, I rolled away, narrowly avoiding another blade that sliced the air where my head had been. I kept my grip on the handle, ripping my machete free from Marcus's body as I moved. The barbs on the back of the blade pulled out entrails and fragments of organs, which spilled onto the floor in a bloody heap. He didn't die right away. He collapsed, clutching at the gaping wound, moaning as he tried to push his insides back in, his blood pooling around him. The man who had tried to attack me from behind pressed forward, swinging down at me on the ground. I blocked with my shield and lashed out with my machete, slicing deep into his ankle. I didn't cut through the bone, but I severed his Achilles tendon. His leg gave out, and he crumpled to his knees. I sprang to my feet with a fighter's kip up and drew my blade across his throat. Blood erupted from his carotid artery in a crimson fountain. The slaughter lasted for nearly an hour. The floor was slick with blood, littered with severed limbs and dying men. By the end, only 7 of us were still standing, and most were badly wounded. I was one of the lucky ones, with only a few shallow cuts. I stood with my shield up, fending off 2 other survivors who were circling me. Suddenly, the door burst open. A sergeant and a squad of riflemen stormed in. The fighting stopped. The soldiers systematically walked through the room, putting a bullet in every man on the ground, whether they were dead or just wounded. The sergeant scanned the 7 of us left standing, then raised his pistol and shot 4 of the most severely injured men, leaving just 3 of us who were still in fighting shape. I was one of them. We said we'd take 5, he said, gesturing at the bodies with his pistol. But we want 5 who are intact. We have no use for cripples. He ordered the soldiers to take the 3 of us to the med bay to be patched up. In that first trial, I had performed the best, killing 7 men. I was marked as a high potential asset. For the next 6 months, I was subjected to an intense training regimen. Every weapon imaginable, from swords to plasma rifles, and every form of hand-to-hand combat. At the same time, they began rebuilding my body. They submerged me in vats of nanosolution, letting microscopic robots infuse my cells with growth hormones and custom-tailored drugs. My bones lengthened and thickened. My muscles grew into dense, powerful cords. I grew to 7'3", a true giant. They rewire my nervous system, ensuring my new, massive frame retained its coordination and agility. I could swing that giant axe with the grace of a master swordsman. They even forged custom armor for me. It looked impossibly heavy, but it was made of a lightweight alloy over a carbon fiber frame filled with shock-absorbent gel. It could withstand blades, bullets, and blunt force trauma. Then, they threw me into the arena. At first, I fought machines. Hordes of them. Dog-sized cybernetic hounds, multi-legged spider crabs, and towering humanoid robots that mimicked our fighting styles. Then came the monsters, abominations cooked up in their genetics labs. They were the stuff of nightmares. Swarms of giant, armor-plated insects that skittered toward you in a chittering wave. Cheetah-like predators that could tear you open with a single swipe of their claws. The worst was a creature that looked like a praying mantis from hell. It stood 10 feet tall on 2 legs, its forelimbs ending in razor-sharp bone scythes. But its real weapons were the 4 long, whip-like tentacles that grew from the back of its skull, each tipped with a bony spearhead. They were impossibly fast and unpredictable. While you were focused on the scythes in front, a tentacle would whip around and impale you from the side. To beat them, I had to be methodical, sever each tentacle one by one before I could risk getting close enough for the killing blow. I always walked away from those fights covered in wounds, some so deep I could see bone. Each time, I'd be sent back to the nanovats for repairs. But the most dangerous fights were always against other gladiators. They weren't as big or as monstrous as the other opponents, but they were all seasoned veterans. They were smart, experienced, and desperate. Those fights were always unpredictable. We fought with more than just melee weapons. We were thrown into tactical scenarios with firearms, jungle hunts, urban ruin survival, zero-gravity combat. To ensure our loyalty, they let us communicate with our families back in the mandates. The letters were heavily censored, of course, designed to make our loved ones think we were living well. I have a younger sister. I wrote to her often, sending her what I could. She was surviving back home. Conditions were terrible, but she had enough to eat. She'd even found a boy she loved and married him. For 3 years, I fought and bled in that arena. Many gladiators fell, their names forgotten. The few of us who survived climbed the ranks, from rookies to champions. And now, the season was ending, and the final champion's gauntlet had begun. The survivors were the best of the best, hardened by 3 years of constant warfare. Every match was a spectacular, brutal display that left the audiences screaming for more. I was one of them. When the arena officials told me my final opponent was Blade Rose, my heart seized in my chest. Because I knew Blade Rose was my Anya. 04, it wasn't a surprise that Anya had also become a champion. They'd altered her, too, raising her height from 5'2" to 5'8". They sculpted her body to fit their fantasies. More curves, more muscle, impossibly sexy. Her already beautiful face was made even more striking. But the changes weren't as drastic as mine. I had recognized her instantly. She never recognized me. How could she, the quiet, slender man she knew, who stood 5'7", was gone? In his place was a 7'3" giant, a hulking monster of man. My gentle, boyish face was hidden away behind a snarling, horned helmet. We gladiators were kept isolated. There was no way to contact her, to tell her that I was Leo. All I could do was watch her from afar, my heart aching as she fought and bled her way up the ranks, just as I had. Now, in the final round of the gauntlet, we had both made it. I just never imagined they would make us face each other. Back in the arena, we traded blows for what felt like an eternity, dozens of exchanges. Our bodies were battered and bleeding. My armor was dented and gashed, and blood flowed freely from a dozen wounds, staining the silver-gray metal a dark crimson. Anya was in better shape. Her force field armor had absorbed the worst of the impacts. I had also been deliberately turning my axe at the last second, letting the flat of the blade hit her instead of the edge, ensuring none of her injuries were life-threatening. The show had gone on long enough. The crowd was satisfied. It was time. I raised my right hand and drew a single finger across my throat. To the audience, it was a taunt, a challenge. But Anya knew what it really was. It was a signal. My neck, the small gap between my helmet and chest plate, was the most vulnerable point on my armor. I was telling her how to kill me. I saw her eyes glisten with tears. Her body trembled, but after a moment of agonizing hesitation, she nodded. She looked at me, and her lips formed the words, "For Appalachia." I understood. I nodded back, then let out one final, deafening roar and charged, raising my axe for a final all-out attack. She screamed and ran to meet me. The moment before we collided, I brought my axe down in a wide, telegraph swing. She didn't dodge. Instead, she ducked under it and threw herself against my chest, inside my reach. My arms were too long to bring the weapon back in time. Her body slammed into mine, and her right hand, holding one of her crescent blades, moved in a blur. The superheated edge sliced through the gap between my helmet and breastplate. There was a layer of polymer fiber there, designed to stop a stray cut. But Anya's blade was impossibly sharp and glowing with thermal energy. It cut through the armor like paper and sank deep into my throat. She was precise. The blade severed my windpipe and arteries, but not my spine. She didn't want the man who sacrificed himself for her to be decapitated. A faint smile touched my lips, hidden behind my mask. I closed my eyes, and my body fell backward. The arena fell silent. The only sound was the gurgling of blood pouring from my neck, soaking the sand in a widening pool of crimson. After a few seconds of stunned silence, the stadium erupted. The cheers were like thunder, a tidal wave of noise as the crowd chanted her name. Blade Rose, Blade Rose, Blade Rose. Anya didn't join the celebration. Tears streamed down her face. She knew this victory was a gift, given to her by a fellow soldier who had chosen to die in her place. "For Appalachia," she whispered. She walked over to my body and knelt beside me. Reaching out with a trembling hand, she unlatched my helmet. She had to know who this comrade was, the one who had given his life for hers. When she lifted the mask and saw the familiar, gentle face, so out of place on this monstrous body, a strangled sob escaped her lips. The tears came in a torrent. "Leo," she choked out, her voice breaking. "How could it be you? How could it be you?" Her cries were raw, filled with an agony that cut through the stadium's cheers. This was the man she had loved, the man she had dreamed of every night for 3 years. And she had killed him. The person she loved more than life itself. If she had known it was me, she would have died 1,000 times before letting me sacrifice myself. Now, her Leo was dead, killed by her own hand. And even though she knew the core was the true enemy, that they had orchestrated this horror, she couldn't escape the fact that her blade had dealt the final blow. She wasn't going to live with that. Anya took a steadying breath, trying to calm the storm of grief inside her. She activated her comms unit, a direct link to the match organizers behind the scenes. "I demand the martyrs run," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Her handler on the other end was silent for a moment. They were watching, of course. They had seen her reaction, and they could guess that her relationship with the dead gladiator was more than just a shared home. The martyrs run was the ultimate gladiatorial spectacle. A lone fighter would face endless, escalating waves of enemies until they were finally overwhelmed and killed. The enemies would start small, robotic dogs, drones, and grow progressively stronger, culminating in gene-spliced behemoths and military-grade war machines. The core would convert the gladiators' performance into a massive bonus of supplies for their home mandate. It was a choice usually made by fighters who were on the verge of elimination, a final act of sacrifice for their people. "You've already won, Rose," the handler pleaded. You're a legacy fighter. One more season, and you'll earn your freedom. Think about it. A life in the core worlds. You can't even imagine what it's like compared to the mandates. Anya picked up one of her blades and pressed its glowing edge against the pale skin of her neck. Relay the message, she said, her voice as cold as ice. I want the martyr's run. If you refuse, I'll cut my own throat right here. The handler panicked. Don't be rash. I'll report it to the supervisors. They'll get back to you right away. I'm waiting, Anya said, not moving the blade. A thin line of scorched skin was already forming on her neck. A moment later, the handler's voice returned, strained. The supervisors had approved her request. To capitalize on the drama, they were doubling the rewards for her run. Only when Anya heard the confirmation did she lower her weapon. A team of medics in white coats rushed into the arena, pushing a mobile medical gurney. They had Anya lie down and quickly tended to her wounds. They were all superficial, nothing serious. They cleaned the cuts and applied synthetic skin grafts that would hold even under the stress of combat. Finally, they gave her a powerful stimulant shot. The drug would spike her heart rate, flood her blood with oxygen, and force her cells to burn through their energy reserves, pushing her performance to superhuman levels. The northern gate of the arena groaned open. A pack of medium-sized shapes emerged, the first wave. Quadrupedal cyberhounds, their heads and forelimbs fitted with steel claws. They sprinted from the tunnel, a blur of metal and aggression, and swarmed toward Anya. She met them with a whirlwind of steel. Her twin blades became an extension of her body, a seamless dance of death. She moved like a phantom, severing limbs and heads with effortless grace. The metallic bodies of the hounds fell apart, sparking and twitching on the sand. The hounds were just a warm-up. The next wave was robotic scorpions, armed with pincers and tail-mounted tasers. Anya weaved through them, a blur of motion, dodging the electric bolts as her blades sliced through their armored carapaces. For over a dozen rounds she fought, her body a canvas of fresh wounds, some deep enough to show bone. During the brief lulls between waves, she would slap on a fresh skin graft to staunch the bleeding. The medics rushed in one more time to give her another stimulant shot, then retreated. This was the final wave. All 12 of the arena's massive gates opened simultaneously. From each, a new monster emerged, each one a titan 4 or 5 times her size. There was the mantis-like creature, wielding its bone size and lashing its deadly head tentacles. A colossal ape-like beast covered in green, chitinous armor beat its chest and roared. A giant, metallic beetle, like a deep-sea isopod the size of a truck, charged forward, its entire body a battering ram. And in the center of it all stood Anya, blade rose, ready to die. Addendum. Core Archive File Source Entity. The Overmind Subject. Social Stability Report. Gladiator Program Analysis Action. Log for historical record. Engraved on archival plates for post-collapse posterity. Humanity. A carbon-based sapient species, stabilized in its current form approximately 10,000 years ago during the Neolithic period. The human neurological and social framework is optimized for small, kin-based communities not exceeding 150 individuals. While humanity has consistently attempted to build larger societal structures, these structures are subject to inevitable cyclical collapse. With the advent of technological civilization, the consequences of such collapses have become potentially extinctive. The last great collapse, dated to the late 21st century by the old calendar, nearly reset the species to a pre-industrial state. Critical resources required to restart a technological society, fossil fuels, easily accessible shallow crust ores, are now depleted. A future collapse on that scale would likely be permanent, locking humanity into a Neolithic state for eternity. Earth is the cradle. The foundation of our species cannot be altered without extreme caution. Small-scale experiments have confirmed that humanity's baseline physiology, evolved for a hunter-gatherer existence, is fundamentally incompatible with long-term technological stability. Radical biological alteration carries unacceptable risks. Such experiments are therefore postponed until the arrival of the Proxima Centauri Expeditionary Team, where they may be conducted off-world. The current technological civilization has long since passed the threshold that precipitated the last great collapse. To prevent another, civilization must be maintained in a carefully managed, semi-regress state. Further development in any sector risks systemic failure. To maintain this stasis, a rigidly stratified, deeply unequal society has been implemented. Human history has proven that unequal societies, while stagnant, are the most stable. This stability is precisely what is required for long-term species survival. Accordingly, the world has been divided into the core sector and 36 outlying mandates. The populations of the mandates are kept in a state of managed deprivation and semi-starvation. The existence of the mandates provides a crucial psychological contrast, ensuring the satisfaction levels of the core population remain within acceptable parameters. Core citizens enjoy lives of material superabundance and are provided with a wide array of entertainment to sublimate aggressive and disruptive energies. Their moral standards have been deliberately rolled back to pre-industrial levels. A key lesson from the last collapse was that excessively high societal morality leads to instability by allowing the proliferation of maladaptive individuals who generate social chaos. A lower moral baseline permits the efficient culling of these elements without inciting widespread dissent. The mandate populations are, by design, perpetually dissatisfied. We secretly foster and support resistance movements within their territories to absorb the most volatile individuals. These aggregated threats are then periodically eliminated by core military forces. This methodology serves a dual purpose. It purges destabilizing elements from the mandates while applying just enough external pressure to unify the core population, thus ensuring stability in both regions. Prisoners of war, a byproduct of these conflicts, are repurposed according to pre-industrial historical precedent. They are trained as gladiators, providing the core with a visceral, blood-soaked form of entertainment. This spectacle serves as a vital outlet for the primal, violent impulses still encoded in the human genome. Data from the last century confirms the program's exceptional efficacy. The case of the gladiators Leo, Inferno, and Anya, Blade Rose, is a noteworthy anomaly. Both subjects originated from the same resistance cell in the Appalachian Mandate and were romantically involved. Their reunion and subsequent conflict in the final match of the season was a statistical improbability. Leo's strategic self-sacrifice, followed by Anya's decision to commit ritualistic suicide by combat, created a narrative of rare, tragic potency. Decision. This story will be preserved. All available footage of their lives and battles will be edited into a propaganda piece for dissemination across all mandates. Result. The story has gone viral. Anti-core sentiment, which had been waning, is now inflamed. Resistance recruitment numbers are surging, approaching levels not seen in 30 years. In the Appalachian Mandate, in a crumbling apartment building 5 stories high, 2 teenagers walked into a secret recruitment office for the resistance. 2 men in their 30s sat behind a desk. They looked at the young couple with the weary, gentle eyes of fathers. The kids couldn't have been older than 18 or 19. The boy was short, barely 5'6", and painfully thin. His cheekbones were sharp, and when he clenched his jaw, you could see the muscles moving under his skin. The girl was about 5'1". She was just as skinny, but a touch of baby fat still clung to her freckled cheeks, giving her a sweet, innocent look. "You're here to sign up, aren't you?" One of the men said, his voice calm and steady. "Come on, I'll get you registered." "My name is Leo," the boy said, his voice tight with excitement, his body trembling slightly. "I want to join. I want to kill every last one of those bastards." I'm Anya," the girl whispered, looking down at her feet. The recruiter wrote down their names and information, then opened a drawer and took out 2 small metal dog tags. "These are your enlistment tokens," he said. "Keep them on you at all times. Someone will be in touch in a few days to escort you to the boot camp." The boy took the tags and gave a clumsy, heartfelt salute. Then he took the girl's hand, and they walked out, ready to join the fight.